What did you see first off from that Bills game? Mac Jones with just 3 throws all game and 41 carries. Like, I mean, what do we see from the Patriots in that one?
I don't know about you. We look at the weather, obviously, going into that game. It was, windy, snowy, and then when the game happened, it definitely got a little bit better. But, I mean, it is what it is, 19 yards. I think contributing this game, the win towards Mac Jones, I would pump the brakes on a little bit. Look, you looked at what Sean McDermott said, talking about the coaching. I would say it was outcoached. Definitely, I think it came down to the Patriots have a lot of running backs. The rotation they have had with Ramondre Stevenson, with Bolden.
Damien Harris.
Damien Harris obviously had that breakaway touchdown. That's been why the team's been good. And as much as we've been doing draft last year, this Bills team does not have a running back. We thought they should have went and taken one last year, and they didn't. And unfortunately, Singletary and Moss just aren't their guys. So I think it came down to that a little bit. But you look at the stats of the game. I mean, the Patriots didn't have much better stats. Bills had more first downs, more third down conversions. So I would say when it comes down to dominance, I would not say that there was a huge separation per se between these two teams. And I would say the next matchup between the two will be very interesting because I think this Bills team is definitely right there. It's interesting. It was an interesting game. It was a good game. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think, though, one of the concerning things if you're like a Bills fan is that how were the Bills not able to stop the run all game when you knew that that's all they were going to do? They only threw the ball 3 times, as Charlie said, and they just didn't have an answer. I didn't really understand, really, because they don't have necessarily a bad run defense, but they don't have a great one. But Patriots just, with Ramondre Stevenson, with Damien Harris, even with Bolton at times, they just had their way. I think N'Keal Harry, he had that great block for that long Damien Harris touchdown.
That punt,
I
feel like we've seen that so much where a punt like barely touches.
It just grazes him.
And they were like, oh yeah, it didn't hit him. Then they're like, wait a minute, it hit his helmet.
And I think also though I think he knew it hit him, but he still didn't go for it. I think he was hoping that like maybe they wouldn't notice, but with the replay you got to be more careful with that. But overall, the Patriots were able to run the ball very efficiently. I think they have probably, in my opinion, a top 10 offensive line at this point in the season. We're struggling early on in the season, but they've really gotten it together. And I think David Andrews has been a big part of Isaiah Wynn. Those guys up front have been huge for the Patriots and why they are currently the top seed. And it's been a very impressive start. I think their defense played very well. I think Judon, he had another really good game.
Great.
He's been
His
great.
Sack numbers are crazy.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Or 11.5, excuse me.
If it weren't for 2 amazing edge rushers, TJ Watt and Miles Garrett, he could easily be in the contention for Defensive Player of the Year. You got at linebacker, Deontay Hightower has been a great.
And Van
Noy has been huge for them. Barmore on the defensive line has been a huge addition.
He's
and
quietly
Gotcha.
You look. They said
all the additions have been huge.
Davis Mills.
Jalen Mills.
Jalen Mills, excuse me, from the Eagles. He was great. You look at all of their off-season ads, and I mean Belichick again being a great coach. Charlie, in terms of I know we talked about the game. Belichick coach. We have another host on the channel. Dylan texted us this morning. Belichick is easily the best coach in the NFL, or the best coach of all time. We're like, really?
Thank you.
Quite
insightful.
Obviously. And I think this season has showed that. But I mean, Charlie, because we were talking about this before we got into the podcast in terms of coaching wise. Sean McDermott. You explain it.
I mean, it was an interesting interview with Sean McDermott. I'm not sure if it was after the game or this morning, but he seemed to say that he was out-coached while trying to say that he wasn't out-coached. He was trying to prove that he wasn't being out-coached, that they got lucky, they, were the more efficient team, which is just not true. The Patriots did almost nothing better than the Bills last night, yet came out on top, and in the process sort of admitted to being the worst coach last night. It was really interesting, and I don't know exactly what he was trying to say. I'm very confused by it. He's, I guess, not the best in front of camera.
He's not representing the I'm the better McDermott in front of camera.
Oh, for sure. But I just think, and it's very interesting for me looking at the stats because I didn't watch the whole game last night. I went to bed pretty early, but the Patriots did nothing better than the Bills except run the ball. And the Bills' leading tackler last night was Jordan Poyer, and coming down from safety, and he only had 8 tackles, even though the Patriots ran the ball 41 times. I believe more than that. Sorry, 46 times.
Yeah, 222 net rush yards.
222 yards.
99, and then 131 passing yards for the Bills to 19. for Mac Jones. He had one passing attempt going to half. I've never seen that in my
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that.
In 3 quarters,
But
you
you know,
don't.
the weird thing is I feel like I saw him pass the ball more. But I guess
He dropped back. He scrambled 5 times.
yeah. So maybe yeah.
And I'm
Okay.
assuming he took a
Yeah.
couple sacks.
Yeah.
No, he did not
No,
take
he
any
didn't. No,
sacks.
he
I mean, at the end of the day, neither offense really played well. I mean, you look at red zone, 0% completion or getting the touchdown for the Patriots, and then the Bills were 1 of 4. So that Damon Harris touchdown again, those plays like that, you have to be so careful. Even when you have great safeties like Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, when you stack the box with both of your safeties. They had no support, great blocking. I mean, the Patriots have been fantastic at getting tight ends who can block. I think Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, something I'm not sure if we talked about this, been fantastic at blocking. So that was a big reason why. I mean, yeah, it was a great run. You kind of knew that hole was open, and it was kind of a classic.
It's really interesting because when you look at it, if you take that run, I believe it was 64 yards. So then Damian Harris had 10 carries for just under 50 yards. Which is 9 carries for just under 50 yards, which is nothing impressive.
I mean, 5
and
yards
then,
for,
and when you look at it, you say, "Wow, the Patriots' run game was dominant. They had 222 yards," but it really wasn't because Ramondre Stevenson only averaged just over 3 yards per carry, and he only ended up with 78 yards.
Yeah.
On 24 carries.
It's the rotation that hurt the Bills.
It
the Bills
really
don't have a running back that they can rotate to. It's just Singletary, who's tiny.
And they only ended up running the ball 16, 24, 25 times, and 6 of those came from Josh Allen.
Yeah.
And Singletary was not efficient on the ground. Zach Moss was not efficient. And they just really didn't do anything very well, the Bills, last night. And I think that's what it came down to.
And then I completely forgot the Breida fumble again.
But both teams fumbled, so it's like
right. And looking back at that fumble when I looked at replay, it was Breida's fault. But the commentators are like, when it gets very cold, it gets dry, ball is
it's hard to hold on to.
It was like Again, you need to have a pocket when it's cold like that to get it, and he held it like this and it went through. So, I mean, again, looking at this game, this is not some game that you can talk. I mean, you can talk about any game very long, but I'm saying this was not a very high, intense, high-scoring game, which I think we all predicted. I'm not sure we said in our predictions video, but we knew this game would not be some high-scoring game. I guess maybe it could have, but both these defenses have been fantastic. You could argue the 2 best defenses right now. They've been fantastic.
Yeah.
So it was definitely, and I think looking at the next matchup, I think it's a Bills must-win going into this next.
They have to.
That was a big loss. That was a big loss that the Bills would have liked to win. I think they would have rather won that game and then lost in the second matchup, but this was a big loss. I mean, the Patriots continue to separate. Quickly before we get into our next segment, we've gotten some questions about this. I would say probably the hottest question right now, something we've actually done a video on, in terms of the Patriots being contenders. What does this show you guys for the rest of the season for the Patriots that they go and beat the Bills?
For the Patriots, it's really interesting because, again, I think in terms of offensive talent, they probably have one of the least amount of offensive talent in terms of at least skill position.
Yeah, for sure.
And that could bode poorly for them in the playoffs when they go against teams that arguably have more talent.
But their defense is shut down.
Their defense is shut down, and even more important, they win in the trenches, especially on the offensive side. While you saw the offensive line, at times they would just dominate Buffalo. And I know Ramondre Stevenson did average only 3 yards per carry, but a couple of those were big losses, which really hampered his yards per carry. He was very effective the whole game, and I think kind of New England won in the trenches, and that's why they won the why they won the game. And I think if they can do that against possibly better defensive lines, like I don't know. An example, Indianapolis, who have Darius Leonard and DeForest Buckner, I think they can easily get past anyone. But I think